AA Beyond Belief is a podcast by, for, and about people who have found a secular path to sobriety in Alcoholics Anonymous. It seems some people are not supposed to be alcoholics. Doctors, lawyers, airplane pilots, and teachers are certainly among this group. Teachers in particular are sometimes seen as larger-than-life role models, and perhaps students, parents, and society as a whole place an unrealistic expectation on them, setting them on a pedestal that only creates more stress for an educator who's dealing with substance abuse issues. Today's episode will feature a conversation with Sam S. from Lawrence, Kansas. Sam will share her story of recovery as a means for opening up a broader conversation about the unique issues that face teachers in recovery from substance abuse. We'll welcome your participation either through your comments on YouTube or in our private Facebook group, and you can call us at 844-899-8278. But before we get into that, let's say hello to Angela over there in our satellite office in Boise, Idaho. Angela, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's good to hear you, and it's really nice to hear from Sam. I'm excited.
Yeah, Sam is, she lives actually now in southeastern Kansas, although she's temporarily in Lawrence now. And but I've been seeing a lot more of her lately on our online meetings, which is nice. How have your online meetings been going over there in Boise, by the way?
They're going pretty well, still 2 a week, and we're enjoying them.
Good. Well, before I introduce you, Sam, I want to talk about an email that I got, that we got about, 3 weeks ago. And it came from, I think it was Lisa M. And she wanted to tell us about a possible origin of that slogan, think, think, think. And she says it came from IBM. And what happened, there was a Thomas J. Watson who was the head of IBM up until 1956. And he happened to be attending that dinner that the Rockefellers that Bill Wilson attended, where he was trying to get money for his big book project and so forth. And Thomas Watson, he donated like $250, which was quite a bit of money at that time. But anyway, he came up with this slogan for IBM that was called Think. And he actually got it copyrighted or trademarked as a slogan on June 6th of 1935. And apparently in the 1950s, it became a marketing slogan for IBM, and it was picked up by AA. And I read in her email that apparently at an AA conference, this IBM slogan was put in one of the pamphlets, and that's how they came up with Think, Think, Think. Interesting, huh?
Okay.
So,
wow, that's great.
Whether or not that's true, we'll find out. We may never know, but if somebody out there has another version of how that slogan came about, I'd love to hear it. Well, now to Sam.
Well, thanks for the AA history. I appreciate that as a history teacher. So.
Oh, are you? I never knew that. I always wondered what you taught. Okay,
Yeah.
Cool. That was always my favorite subject in school too, by the way.
Oh, wow. Well,
Yeah.
I wish I would hear that from more of my students.
Yeah, I don't know why people don't like history. To me, it's a story, and I was always fascinated by it. But anyway.
I love history, so.
Yeah. So Sam, like I said, you were actually attending the We Agnostics group in Lawrence, Kansas before I even knew what a We Agnostics group was, I think. Before we started our group in Kansas City.
Yeah. The We Agnostic group in Lawrence had been going on for, it had been going on for several years when I first started in 2014. And I think we've shrunk down to one meeting now. We used to have two, but we've really struggled with attendance at those meetings in Lawrence.
Yeah, our group in KC has been doing pretty good. We have some of our meetings are bigger than others, but and it's always nice to see you there, by the way, when you're able to make it when you're in town. And now, of course, with our online meetings, I see you quite a bit. It's always good. And those meetings are interesting. We're online, but we're still getting new people to the meeting. Who've like their first meeting at our group has been this online meeting. which is really interesting. And there are people from like, they might be in Missouri or Kansas, but they're maybe a couple of hours away, so they wouldn't necessarily drive into our meeting. And the last meeting, you met someone who was a teacher, and you guys had something in common, and you suggested, you know what, let's do a podcast about teachers.
Right. Well, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.
So let's start, Sam, by why don't you just share your story, and maybe from there we can a conversation will flow, and I'm sure that there will be people out in the audience who might have experiences as teachers or maybe even another occupation that have unique issues. So Sam, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So my story, I was born in Topeka. I grew up out in the country outside of Topeka with my brother and my parents. Really had a very nice childhood, spent a lot of time in nature, was a bit of a loner out there, but my parents did drink. Not extremely heavily, but daily drinking was kind of the norm in my household. And my parents' marriage was kind of dysfunctional, and some of the fighting was sometimes about dad's drinking. But so my parents got divorced when I was 7, and my brother and I moved with my mom down to southeastern Kansas to a really small town where her family was from. And that was a very kind of idyllic place to grow up as a kid as well. But after a few years, we did end up moving back to Topeka into the city this time. And it was around that time that I really started acting out. When I was 13, I met my first boyfriend, and he lived nearby. And so we started sneaking out at night to see each other. And that was the first time I really remember lying to my parents and getting away with it. So it wasn't long after that, when I was a freshman at Topeka High School in 2001, that I was introduced to drugs for the first time. So I started getting high and seemed to be getting away with that too. So so around that same time, I started raiding my dad's liquor supply. I don't exactly remember my first drink. All I remember is that my dad had a lot of liquor in his cabinets that looked really, really old. And I noticed he never really touched that. Like, he had his other drinks of choice that he always drank and replenished. So I didn't think he would notice if these other ones were gone. And sure enough, he didn't. So that's how my friends and I started drinking, was just taking shots of super old gin and other gross stuff. And again, I'm not exactly sure how we got away with it, because we would come home from school and take all these shots and be really drunk by about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And, then parents would come home and somehow nobody noticed. So we just continued doing that. So I started getting pretty involved in politics, and through a political group that I was involved with, I made some friends who were in their 20s. So they kind of became my suppliers of drugs and alcohol during my high school years. And I started drinking alcoholically very quickly. And not long after that, one of my teachers, actually my debate coach, pulled me out of class one day to ask me what was going on with me. And she thought maybe I was pregnant or something, but I said no. And I told her I had been drinking a lot. And she called my mother, and my mother got kind of angry at my friends, but nothing really changed. But I do really remember that as a time where a teacher noticed something off with me in my personal life and made an attempt to reach out and help me. And that ended up being, one of the reasons I wanted to get into teaching high school. Yeah, and I did get pretty involved in debate and other activities at school, and I think that kind of helped keep my substance abuse in check during that time, kind of keep it relegated to the weekends. But then as I went to college, I went down the road to KU. I ended up choosing to study history, mostly just because I was really good at reading and writing, and I thought I would do well at it, and I did enjoy the subject. And I kind of thought of teaching at that time, but I actually ran into a lot of discouragement around that, about like just the job availability and the pay. So I put off that dream for a long time. I kind of thought it was unrealistic. But I went ahead and got my history degree. Well, not right away, actually. I ended up dropping out multiple times, mostly over the math classes. I was really struggling to complete the math classes, which, smoking a lot of pot and drinking all the time wasn't helping with that,
I
I'm
can't
sure.
believe how much we have in common. That's crazy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So when I was a sophomore in college, I met a guy that I ended up marrying. We drank a lot together, did a lot of drugs together. We had a really fraught relationship. We fought all of the time. I have no idea why we got married, but we did. And about a year into my marriage is when I reached out to a therapist. I was really having this problem where I felt like I couldn't engage in confrontation, like at all. Whenever I would try to kind of speak up for myself, I would just get very emotional. And it was a huge problem for my relationship and sometimes at work. And it was just this huge source of shame and embarrassment. So I reached out to a therapist because I actually thought she would be able to just like give me some kind of magic advice that would fix it right away. But she ended up calling me in, and we've been working together ever since. And she was the one who kind of got me into recovery. So of course, like during my 20s, the drinking was getting worse. My tolerance was getting less. I was spending a lot more time being sick. The marriage was not going well. About a year and a half or so into my therapy, my therapist started to explain to me that if I didn't deal with my substance use issues, I probably wouldn't be able to make progress on anything else in my life that was bothering me. And I really resisted that for a while. I tried for about a year to control drink, and we all know how that goes. Just constant failure and disappointment. I really resisted going to AA because I thought it was a religious program, and because I was kind of raised with this idea of just being independent and asking for help is weak and just take care of yourself. But through my job that I had at the time, I actually met an old timer in AA who befriended me and kind of saw that I needed help and would talk to me about AA. And so when I hit my bottom, he was actually the person who took me to my first meeting. And so he took me to a traditional AA meeting. And it was kind of funny because there was actually a girl there that I knew from high school who I had really looked up to and wanted to be just like her. And so it was really comforting to see her there. And I remember the first thing that the first person said was, "You never have to drink again if you don't want to." And that just shot right through me. And so I say that to people often in their first step meetings because it made such a big impact on me. So yeah, I discovered the agnostic meetings. I got very involved with those. I ended up changing jobs. I got into landscaping for a couple of years, and the physical labor was really great for me, I think, during that time.
See, I think I met you when you were doing the landscaping thing, didn't I?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And that's also the time where I met the person in AA who ended up being my math tutor and getting me back into school and helping me get my bachelor's degree. So that finally happened when I got sober. So at this point, I've done a couple of things that I never could have imagined I was capable of, finishing my degree and getting sober. So I started revisiting this idea of getting into teaching because things started seeming possible again that always seemed impossible. And I just decided I was going to follow my passion no matter how hard it was and just figure out a way to do it. So I ended up finding a program through Fort Hays that lets you teach on a restricted license in the subject area that you have your degree in while you take education classes. So I've been doing that for the past 2 years. I've been teaching at a rural high school, and I am getting my master's in education this May. Actually just finished my last class today.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So yeah, I think that, like I said, wanting to get into teaching high school had a lot to do with realizing that my alcoholism really got started at that time in my life. And I really wanted to be there for kids the way that my teachers were there for me, and kind of try to help kids stay on track during this time where they're, trying to figure themselves out and experimenting with different things for the first time. And
So
that's been great.
you're open with your students about your recovery?
I do not specifically tell them that I'm an alcoholic in recovery. They do like to bring up drinking and partying and kind of like get me to talk about it because they assume that I drink and they want to hear about that.
And they're high school kids, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I tell them that I don't drink, and they find that really kind of fascinating. So it's fun to be able to tell them, like, yeah, like I have fun in other ways, and drinking just makes you really sick and makes you act stupid, and you can't even remember the good stuff. So yeah, it really helps me a lot in my recovery to know that I am being a role model of having a fun life without drinking, and kind of being that example that I really needed when I was their age that I didn't really have.
Right. Yeah. My drinking, like most of us, got bad, I guess, in high school. I mean, it was that's when I first started drinking, really. I mean, on a regular basis, and it started off bad and got worse from there. But, I remember a teacher that I really liked, and she was my English teacher. And I always had a lot of respect for her, and I knew that she liked me. And she never really said anything about my drinking or the way that I would, act. But I could tell that she was kind of disappointed in me. Whenever kids might make fun of my drinking or something like that, or make jokes about it, I could just see an expression on her face that just made me feel like there's something wrong with this. Of course, I would just dismiss that, for the next drink. But yeah. So it would have been different to have a teacher that would just come over, and talk to me, I wonder if you ever recognize a student like that you think might have a problem.
I have, I do know of a student who is struggling. It's been difficult to connect with that person, actually. I think I have still been a little bit reticent to be really direct around that kind of thing, especially when it is based on gossip, and not somebody asking for help. But yeah, I probably should.
Yeah, well, and of course they have guidance counselors too at schools too, I guess, that are, that the kid could see too.
Yeah, we actually don't.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, our school is really small, so
Okay.
our staff is really limited.
So it really is on the teachers to handle any kind of thing like that, I suppose.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do you talk in amongst yourselves with the teachers about any of these things? I mean, do you know, is anybody out as being in recovery on the staff, or do you guys not talk about anything like that?
There is one person on staff who, actually the custodian, who I've discovered is, we just through kind of chatting, we have kind of figured out that both of us are in recovery. And then I discovered that he doesn't drink. He hasn't drank for a long time. And so I shared with him that I'm in recovery because I felt pretty comfortable having that conversation with him. But outside of that, I have really kept it to myself with the rest of the staff and the administration.
That's pretty much how
Maybe
I
it's,
am in the workplace
yeah,
too. I don't really
yeah.
bring it up. It just doesn't, there's not a reason to really, and for a long time when I was first starting out, I wouldn't want anybody to know. I wouldn't. Now, if someone were to find out, it wouldn't bother me, but at that time when I was first getting sober, I was, it took me a while to get financially stable. So I always had a lot of fear that I could lose a job or something. And so and I think I carried that stigma with me longer than I should have.
Yeah, I mean, if I develop kind of a friendship on top of a work relationship and I feel comfortable, I'll disclose at that point. But yeah, it's a very small school and a small community, so things kind of, hot gossip gets around fast. So.
By the way, Joe is asking what kind of history you teach.
Oh, well, I'm the only social studies teacher for the middle school and high school. So I teach Kansas history, geography, current events, American history, world history, and government.
Well, cool. Yeah. I went to a small school. Lansing High School was small at that time. There were 400 students in the entire school. There were 90 in my graduating class. Is that about the kind of school that you teach in?
No, there are less than 90 in the whole K through 12
my
school
gosh.
where I teach.
Okay.
So this year we are graduating 7 students.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
Extremely small.
I love it. I love it. And now you're online doing it.
Yes, that's been interesting.
How's that going?
Well, that we have some kids that, live so far out in the country that they really don't have a solid internet connection. So it's been pretty challenging for a lot of them.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me this: do you think that it would be difficult for a teacher who, a teacher who's been teaching for a while and they have an alcohol problem that they've been hiding, and now they're thinking they want help? Do you think it would be difficult for a teacher to get help for their drinking and to come out openly about it?
I do, partly because of what you mentioned in the opening, that, teachers are supposed to be role models. And so I guess that equates to being some kind of perfect person. But in addition to that, I think teachers have a really hard time just like putting themselves first and taking time away from the job. Like, I think they really struggle to take vacation time at all, or for mental health or anything, because it's so difficult to be away and, step away from your lessons and to write out substitute plans. And you just feel like you're really letting the kids down anytime that you're not there. So I think teachers put a lot of pressure on themselves to not miss work. So I think like going to a treatment program would be really challenging.
Yeah, and it's not like it's just an 8-hour-a-day job either, is it?
No.
So
not at all.
I could see how stress can pile up, on somebody that's in that profession, especially all kinds of situations in the inner city schools too, where you got so many problems.
Definitely. I mean, you get so emotionally invested in the kids, and the stakes always seem really high. And if kids are not successful, it's really easy to kind of take that on yourself and feel really terrible. And yeah, it's a very high stress job. And from what I've seen, like alcoholism does correspond pretty highly with job stress. So I think a lot of teachers feel the need to blow off steam, and it can get out of control.
Yeah. Angela mentioned, she reminded me, I think the last time that I don't know if it was the last podcast or the one before that, that you called in and you mentioned that you help your students with mindfulness.
Yeah, so that was something that I tried out last year. I got the principal to let me do like an 8-week pilot program on mindfulness meditation. We had this like 15-minute block in the middle of the day that was kind of used as a study hall. So I made my room a meditation room during that time, so kids could come in and just sit or lie down, and I do a guided meditation, because there is a whole lot of study about how much mindfulness practice can, improve anxiety and depression and academic stress, and help kids perform better on tests, and all kinds of benefits.
And do they like it?
They really did like it. Some of them wanted to just come in and take a nap, which I was fine with too. I mean, I think naps are beneficial as well, but some of them did come in and meditate and really got into it. So I'd like to continue it, but I think it's going to have to be something that happens extracurricular now, because they have kind of revamped the schedule and put that time towards more math remediation. So.
Wow. Well, cool. I think it sounds like a great idea. And I know that there's, several states that are working on resilience, and being trauma informed. And so they're putting in meditation and things like that into their curriculum and schedules and everything. So I think that's going to be a cool thing in the future as we go on.
Yeah, it can be really helpful with trauma, which is showing up more and more in the kids, just to help with kind of impulse control and emotional self-regulation.
Right.
So,
yeah. Bubbles Blonde, who I happen to know also as Bree, has a question. Yeah, you know Bree. Yeah. And anyway, I'm going to start calling her Bubbles Blonde. She says, do you find the kids are having problems concentrating due to isolation? She says her sister in Maryland at the core of the infection, and she says the kids seem to be like losing hope. Wow.
Yeah, I've been having a really hard time getting them engaged over Zoom, getting good discussions going, and a lot of kids are doing next to nothing as far as their assignments go. But we, like many schools in our state, have decided to actually freeze the grades from the third quarter, so they can only improve on where they were at before. We're not going to lower their grades because we realize that so many kids really don't have home environments where they can reasonably study. They don't have quiet space. They don't have any kind of authority figure who is actually disciplining them to sit down and do the work the way that they do at school. So it's just kind of unreasonable for us to expect them to perform well.
And it's going to be hard on them too. If you're in a rural area and you're really isolated anyway, just because of where you live, and the only time you really get to break that isolation is at school, when you get to see your friends and your teachers and so forth. And now you don't even get that break.
Yeah. Most of them just tell me that they're really, really bored.
Yeah. Tracy Rossmann has a question for you. She says, do you think there'll ever come a time when we can talk openly about our recovery without shame and anticipating repercussions? She says, I'm seeing such admissions more and more in obituaries. Wow.
Yeah. I personally think that yes. I think that more and more people are coming out as being in recovery. There's some strong arguments within the more traditional AA community about that, and anonymity and everything. But there's also, quite a few people that are saying that, anonymity is killing people, and that, by sharing that we're in recovery, it gives people, someone to go to if they think that they have a problem. And so I do think that it's getting, it's starting to get, less frowned upon. I think as, at least in my lifetime, I've noticed that there is a bit of a less stigma towards addiction and substance use. I mean, there's a lot of language changes, which is part of, why I think it's becoming more accessible and okay. Again, it's also depending on where you live, what that means. Here, where I'm at, I'm free to say whatever, and so at my jobs, I've shared, depending on when it was needed. I usually don't wear an AA T-shirt or anything like that, or put it. I don't answer the phone with that, and then the company I'm working for or anything. But I also, if I'm asked about, do you want to go out and do this, or we're having a company party doing this, I would say that I don't drink, and if asked why, I'd say that I was in recovery, but I also haven't had a job where like with teachers, there's that teacher parent administration whole bureaucracy thing. And I can see that, particularly in a rural area, that could be a problem. So, I was curious about if you guys talked to each other, like with the other teachers, to see if they had any sort of programs for teachers and people who work with kids, just like, the nurses and doctors have a program, and the pilots, have their own meetings and stuff for people that have, because I do think it's kind of a special group, because you guys have things, the pressure that you're dealing with, the multiple people that are coming at you with how you're supposed to be doing your job, and that a lot of us can't relate to that in the magnitude of what you guys deal with on a daily basis. Like, I would have my boss or people coming at me regarding my behavior, but you have it, times 3 at least. So, and if the kid has a family that's that has a split home, then you have both sets of parents and everybody telling you how you're supposed to be doing things, and I could see how that could definitely be a problem if you were to share. But I also think it would be really important to have groups that where you guys could talk to each other peer to peer, like in Alcoholics Anonymous, but with other teachers. So
that's a great idea. Maybe they do have that in bigger cities. I have not heard of it, but I think it would be really beneficial. Like navigating those boundaries with kids has been interesting, because they, as teachers, they encourage us to model in the classroom as like an instructional strategy, like model the process of learning through like making mistakes and admitting it and correcting it. And so I like to kind of carefully like model things for them also from my personal life, because they are really interested in my personal life. They're always asking me questions, and most of the time I like put them off. You got to keep those boundaries up to some extent, but but I do share with them sometimes, like, yeah, I dropped out of college and it took me 11 years to graduate, but you know what, I went back and I got a tutor and I did it. I think that's really important for them to be able to see their teachers as human beings who have made mistakes and overcome them. And, that's just like a part of life.
Yeah.
right.
So we have a caller from area code 314. We'll go ahead and take that. Hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, Don. It's Diane. Hi, Sam. How are you tonight?
Hi.
Hi, I'm so glad this this is my first one to tune in for this evening because I am a teacher. And your conversation has been interesting for me, Sam, because you're a teacher who's already in recovery. And I was a teacher and I am still a teacher, but I was an alcoholic while being a teacher. And I think that you hit it on the nose from the outside perspective, but I never realized it while I was on the inside, a drinker on the inside of the classroom, I guess I would say. Ironically, my school had a bar just about a block down the road, and happy hour started at 3:00 and the buses rolled at 3:10. So we all easily walked. And, the happy hour specials were good because they knew they had a school of about 40 teachers that would make sure they made happy hour probably 4 to 5 nights of the week. So, but I think, Sam, you've done a great job representing it's not an excuse to drink. And that's what I'm really working on right now for myself, is that I'm not making excuses for why I drink, because, and I've said in group even that, I'm an adult. I make the decision to open that bottle. Nobody's forcing me to do that. But what was really easy was to go and hang out with my teacher friends and talk about kids and talk about lessons and talk sometimes about our principal, whatever was on our mind that day. And it was really easy to do over a drink, and then 2 drinks, and then 3 drinks. And we all knew what kind of place we'd be in the next morning. And we just kind of learned how to open up that file the next morning and teach our lesson. And no matter what kind of hangover state we were in. I taught elementary. So as far as having conversations about kids or with kids about alcoholism, it's not quite as probably prevalent as it is in your world, Sam, with high schoolers. But, I think that looking back on that, it was a coping mechanism of what it was I did every day. And then I moved into administration, and it's a whole nother level of political pressure on us in the academic world. And not the only reason I would open a bottle every night I got home from work. I have a lot of other baggage I bring to that too. But it was easy, and we all know that alcohol is that thing that takes us away from what's really going on in the world, in our own heads or out in the world around us. And I'm kind of hoping this pandemic helps the United States at least see that teaching isn't easy. I mean, how many parents have you heard from or heard saying, I don't know how teachers do this? It's all over Facebook. But it's not an easy job. It's not an easy job. And I think that being a teacher who was an alcoholic, I am an alcoholic, but I'm not in the classroom anymore. So that does make it a little bit different. But being an alcoholic who's in education, there was a lot and is a lot that is on us that is out of our control a lot of times. And I think that is all something that we talked about when we were drinking, and a lot of the things I've had to process, because I probably didn't do my students the best justice those years I was in the classroom, coming in most likely still drunk the next morning. And just within the last, when I started my sobriety, just almost 2.5 months ago, what hit me was when I was trying to run an administration meeting, and I couldn't get my words out because I was shaking so bad because I was hungover and probably still drunk. And so that at that moment, I thought lots of things were hitting me at that moment, but one of them was, I'm not doing what I came here to do, and that was help kids. And so I know there's a lot of teachers out there that drink a lot and drink more than we should. And unfortunately, who's getting hurt the most probably are our students. So I don't know if that's what y'all wanted to hear, but that's kind of what I wanted to share. So
I appreciate that. It's interesting. You talked about how because of the pandemic that parents might appreciate teachers more. I think that's true. I'm noticing around my neighborhood signs like I've never seen before. We love our teachers. Our teachers are, and I guess it must be parents that are just going crazy with their kids at home, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, and welcome in recovery. Go ahead. Oh, I just wanted to say, welcome to being in recovery. This is, an interesting time to try to get help for, drinking disorders and drinking problems. So I just wanted to welcome you and thank you for calling. That took a lot of courage. And I hope, even if you don't use the AA program, whatever, treatment you decide to go with, that you'll be able to get to the point where you can, see what good you did and continue to do for the children, and let go of the shame. Children are very resilient, and if you haven't seen the movie Resilience, it's excellent on the different things that people are doing to help kids. So I just wanted to let you know that I really appreciate that you called, and I really hope that you do find, recovery, because it sounds like you deserve it, like the rest of us. So thank you.
Well, the group that, I've been in the groups now in Kansas City where Sam is for, 2 weeks now, and it's really, really been helping me. So that has been a positive, and I'm so glad I got to hear Sam as your all host tonight. So thank you, and I hope you'll have a great weekend.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, Diane.
That was nice. Bye-bye.
She's great.
Yeah.
I'm really glad she's in the meeting.
Yeah. I find it so cool that we've got people coming to our group for the first time when we're meeting online. That's really interesting.
Yeah, they're pretty remarkable people.
Yeah. I don't know if I could have done that, but of course it was 1988, so I couldn't have done it.
Yeah. You could not do it because it didn't exist. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, this whole pandemic thing, good God. So I don't know, Sam, in Kansas, are the schools going to be, they're not going to be opening up for the rest of the year, are they?
You mean the rest of the calendar year?
Yeah.
We are not sure yet. We haven't gotten any certain direction from the state on that. What I kind of anticipate is that the more densely populated districts may stay out at least through Christmas. But I think that districts like ours may be able to go back just because, we've had so few cases and we're such a small populated area. So that's kind of what I've heard, around in the ether, but I really don't know for sure. I really, really, really hope we go back in August. I do not like this at all.
No. There's another teacher in our group, Jonathan, and I was talking to him about it, and he said that the online teaching wasn't going really well either. He didn't think so either.
No.
So that's an interesting thing all in itself, because, you'd think that that's the future is, doing things online like that. But I wonder what it is about it, Sam. Now, you mentioned it's because, for one thing, it's that kids don't have, good internet access in their home. They might not even not have internet.
Some of them don't. I know that our girls are doing excellent with it, and so but they're very self-directed, and we have a good internet connection, and we're both very open and involved, and interested in learning as well. So they've learned to kind of teach us, because they'll ask us a question and we'll ask what they think about it, and then we go from there. So I think it really kind of depends on the kids and the area that you're in, whether or not it works. And particularly introverted kids, it seems to be great because they're like, yay, I don't have to go to school and feel awkward, but for a lot of kids who don't have that, or kids who have alcoholic parents, going to school is a refuge. And so, I'm hoping for those kids that we'll figure something out so that they can have a better, safer learning environment.
We definitely have kids that are doing well, but they're mostly the kids that were always doing well.
Right.
Yeah, like lots of good home lives and very self-directed, and even some of them have already been taking like online college classes.
Right.
But, it's the kids that are either not doing well or kind of right on the edge that have kind of fallen off the radar. So
that's sad.
Yeah.
That's sad. So if there's anyone else that wants to call in, our number is 844-899-8278, and we'll be glad to take your call. Even if you're not a teacher. Jaron is writing in. He works at an elementary school, and he has 2 young kids at home. And he says, as both a coworker and a parent, he can vouch for these teachers working hard. They work hard, he says. And I knew they did.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad that our girls are older now because, if this happened, when they were first learning Common Core, there's no way.
Yeah.
No way I could help them with that.
Well, and so much of like the learning now, we want them to be collaborating with each other and, to work on the social emotional skills, to be together. And there's just so much more that happens in a classroom than, reading something and writing a response and emailing it in. There's just a magic in the classroom that you can't recreate over Zoom so far that I have found.
Right.
That's interesting. It's like an AA meeting too, in a way. There's a lot that goes on. The online meetings are great. It's good to have that, but there's that extra component that you kind of miss with the face-to-face connections.
Yeah.
There's a lot that happens, in a meeting that doesn't really have to do with what we're talking about sometimes. Maybe it's just seeing people in person means a lot. I never really thought about how much I appreciate that. Diane also says that she's seeing a spike in child abuse and couch surfing for her older students.
Yeah. Yeah, I really think that school for many of these kids is kind of the safe place and the structured place, and they are still developing their impulse control and everything. So
yeah. And I was surprised, on the news, the percentage of kids that get their meals from school.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. So there's a lot of kids that just aren't even getting their meals now, regular food. So tough times.
Well, I think in some areas, I know in our area that there are schools that are open for kids to get their food, and so they can go and they even opened it up so that you don't have to be like a registered student, so anybody can come, and the kids can get out in line and 6 feet and all of that kind of stuff, but grab a lunch and take it home. And at some of them you can get a box that will supply the child with breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So, but again, I think it's the area that you live in and such.
So Sam, what do you see for your future? What do you want to do going forward?
Well, so even though I just finished school, I'm kind of already thinking about continuing on to add some endorsements to try to make myself a little bit more marketable. I am looking for teaching jobs closer to the Lawrence, Kansas City area.
Oh, okay. That'd be nice. It'd be nice to have you close up here.
Yeah, I would like to come home. It's been a good experience down there, but yeah, I miss my community.
It's a beautiful area down there, southeastern Kansas. A lot of people don't realize how nice that is. Are you in the Flint Hills area?
Yes.
Yeah, I love it down there. It's really, really beautiful. If you haven't ever driven through that part of Kansas before, it's like from Emporia, Kansas, down to the Oklahoma border, I guess. It's just south of Wichita. It's this Flint Hills area where it's just beautiful, almost treeless areas. It's like an ocean of grass, basically, and hills. You can just look and look and look and look forever, and it's just hills and rolling grass. It's mesmerizing, really.
Yeah, I do love that about it.
Yeah.
It's great.
But of course, around here, we actually, we have have things to do here. It's just an advantage.
I was down there yesterday, and I was actually cruising around with a local friend of mine, and he was so funny because he was saying, I don't know what city people do for fun. What do they do to entertain themselves when they don't have all this to drive around and look at?
That's funny. Well, Neil Montgomery says they run the regular bus schedule where he lives just so kids can eat. Wow, man. Amazing. I never really, it never really hit me. Well, I don't have kids or anything. And fortunately, growing up, I didn't have to worry about food. And then we have someone from Facebook making a comment. My son just finished university. There are issues with screen learning for some. I bought him the newest e-reader so he could save money, get his textbooks on PDF. He said that he just doesn't get the saturation of learned info on any screen e-reader or computer compared to what's comprehended and retained in person or from a physical book. By the way, I like physical books better too. He is a millennial, so it's not a generational thing. A study of law students, half got digital books, half got hard copies. The hard copy students, I think she's going to say, did better. That's interesting. And we have a caller. We'll take this call. Hello.
Hey guys, this is Jared from Madison.
Hey Jared, nice to hear from you again. How you doing?
Oh, I just keep putting one foot in front of the other like everybody else. How about yourself?
Oh, same thing. Same thing. So what are your thoughts on this topic?
So, well, I've been working right now, so I kind of been getting a few minutes here, a few minutes there. So I apologize. I haven't been in depth with the whole thing, but I just wanted to say that to the teachers, and the young lady that I know that I'm very grateful for, what they do for us as parents. And, now that I have two young kids, so I work second shift, and my kids are kindergarten and second grade, and my son struggles with reading. He struggled before the pandemic, so trying to get him on track, that's like an all-day thing, and the pressure of having two kids screaming all day long, trying to get their homework done virtually. I'm running from computer to computer. Oh, this is broken. That's broken. They're on different platforms. I'm uploading, reloading, downloading. It's a never ending process. And then I got to go work at essential job still. And my wife's gone at her essential job. And then being a sober person, it's unbelievably, and then there's no meetings that I go to, in person. And, it's been, in the 13 years I've been sober, this has been the hardest time besides that initial 6 to 7, months. It's been just atrocious, So as a teacher, I would like to know, what do you say to a sober parent that's just overloaded, and just like everybody else, I know that, we're in the same storm. We're not in the same boat, is what I've heard from some people, and I think that kind of rings true. So you got any suggestions for a stressed out parent here?
Well, I would just say that I think teachers are very understanding of that situation and, very flexible right now. So, our guidance from the state was less is more, and, don't try to teach new content and just kind of give kids the basics. So, if teachers aren't doing that, that's kind of a problem. But I think they realize that we realize that it's really difficult, and we're making lots of exceptions at the time. We're being very, I used to never take late work, and of course that's gone totally out the window and everything. So things have definitely relaxed for the time being. Our main concern is that we don't want kids to be too stressed and anxious. We know that the whole pandemic is probably weighing on them a lot, and the lack of structure and everything. So I don't really know what to tell you, except that if it's too much, just to reach out to the teachers and let them know that they're struggling to keep up, and I'm sure that they can make some kind of special arrangements.
Yeah. I guess when I do my sorry to cut you off, Jen. I guess when I do my inventory at night, I kind of think that, maybe I'm just putting too much pressure on my kids. And when things get frustrating, they can sense that. And then I feel bad, and then they feel bad. And that's not a good place, or promoting active learning. You know what I mean? So maybe, like you're right, less is more. And I think as alcoholics, we're intense people. We want everything right away, instant gratification, whatever. And sometimes you got to let things breathe. And so.
Yeah, I would say just be kind to yourself. Just don't be too hard on yourself.
I was going to say, Jaron, something funny. I was not all parents, I think, are as conscientious as you are. I was walking my dog a few weeks ago, and there's a lot of kids around the neighborhood and so forth. And I just heard this one little kid remark something. Says, "Well, my mom just told me that just to watch something educational on television, and that's good enough."
Yeah. And you see a lot of the parents that probably wouldn't take the time to get all these platforms ready for their kids, or to have lesson plans ready, or print out all these things and scan them back to the teachers. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of work. So,
It sounds like you're doing a really good job to me.
I'm trying, so I just wanted to call in quick. I better get back to work and just say, thanks. And I really appreciate the show, and you guys are doing a great job. So
Thank you,
stay safe.
Jaron. Nice to hear from you. Yeah, Joe here mentioned something that I read about too, that in his area, the buses drive out to rural areas and park to provide Wi-Fi to kids. I heard about that too, because a lot of people that don't have Wi-Fi, like they'll go to schools and they'll park out in the parking lot to be able to get the public Wi-Fi from the schools.
That's what some of our kids are doing too. Yeah, they're hanging out in the parking lot. And then some of our teachers have actually opened up their homes, and kids are coming over to use their Wi-Fi to get their homework done.
Yeah. Wow. That a lot of people, there's that digital divide. It's like nowadays, and where the world that we're living in now, internet access and high-speed internet access is really a necessity. It's almost like water and electricity. You just about need it anymore. I had a doctor's appointment today that was online. So that's
I hope that does come out as one of the results of this, is that access to the internet is viewed as a public necessity.
Yeah. I'd like to see something like the New Deal for the 21st century, where you kind of just say, okay, let's bring this country up to speed now to where it should be.
Well, I think we need to vote people in that are going to do that.
Yeah.
That's my plan.
Yeah. Well, I think that we've filled the hour pretty well. Again, Sam, thank you very much for coming on and sharing your story and talking about this topic. It inspired me to reach out to other professions. I'd like to hear from doctors and lawyers and pilots and so forth. Because these professions, the public thinks highly of these people, and they think, I don't want a drunk pilot, I don't want a drunk doctor, but they're out there. So
doesn't do any good to deny it, I guess.
No, it doesn't.
Or deal with it. So, well, thank you so much. It's been fun.
Well, let's see if I can do the right button this time. There we go. And that's it. That's another episode of AA Beyond Belief, the podcast. And thank you for listening. Thank you, Angela, again. And thank you, Sam. I also want to thank all the people that have started contributing on Patreon. I really like to see these small recurring contributions. That is so helpful. We're getting more and more $1 a month contributions, and that adds up. I really, really appreciate it. If you want to do that, just go to patreon.com/AABeyondBelief. And you can set up recurring donations for $1, $5, whatever you want. And also, you can make donations, just a single donation or recurring donations at our website. I just click on the donate button. So thanks again, everybody. We'll be back again next week with another sober distancing episode of AA Beyond Belief.